All right, welcome in everybody. This is Biscuits and SEC Live. This is our 61st show. Hard to believe we've already had 61 of these, but thank you all for coming along. I am Hammer, Boss Man. Will be here momentarily. He's just having some internet issues, so I'm kicking it off solo until he can join. But yeah, once again, thanks everybody for joining. We got a great show tonight. We'll talk a little bit about Cupcake Week 13 recap. We'll get into obviously Rivalry Week coming up, and we've got Travis L. Brown of KBTX to help us pick games this week. He's down in Bryan College Station, so we are super pumped for this one. It's a jam-packed show, and here is the man of the hour. Boss Man is here. So welcome in. I just gave us a nice intro. How you doing tonight, Boss Man?
Doing good. I'm glad to be here. Last day in Colorado. It is frigid here in Fort Collins, Colorado, but looking forward to talking a lot of ball. There's a ton we got to get into tonight with Golesh looking like, according to sources in Arkansas, it's a done deal for him to be the next Arkansas head coach. Everybody's still on Kiffin watch. We've got week 13 to get into, rivalry week, all of that. So going to be a lot of fun.
Absolutely. So I think we can hop into it. But real quick before we do, you might notice these sweet caps we have on. We did a very limited run of these. None for sale at the moment. Just, friends and family got a few of these. Boss Man was kind enough to kind of get these as an early Christmas present. But if any of y'all out there like these, think they're cool, and would be interested in buying them, then obviously reach out because we can get some more made and put them up on our website if that's something that people are interested in. So let us know. We obviously think they're cool, but don't know what the response would be out there. So if you like them and you're interested, give us a shout and let us know, and we can print some more. But you brought it up. I think we should probably lead. I know we got a little bit of stuff we want to talk about in terms of games from last week, but there weren't a ton of real big ones. There was just one ranked-on-ranked matchup. So let's get into the Golesh news. So Alex Golesh from USF, reportedly the new Arkansas head man. Seemingly mixed reviews, I would say, from what I've seen from Arkansas fans. Personally, I think he's probably, a good coach. I think Arkansas is a difficult job, but I certainly don't look at this and think they made a terrible hire. What is your read on this, Boss Man?
Well, first, I think we should say we'll see if this ends up being true. It looks like it's kind of getting run, but it's getting run with mostly Arkansas folks, and typically I tend to, believe those closest on the ground first before I believe anybody else. But we haven't seen a Thamel tweet as far as I'm aware. We haven't seen a NACO's tweet as far as I'm aware. So this is coming from sources that are local to Fayetteville, and the rest of Twitter ran with it. So could be sounding like multiple people now at this point confirming it. But again, haven't seen that national person confirm it yet to make the news official. So with that in mind, I do think that Alex Golesh is a great hire for Arkansas. It sounds like they swung and missed on James Franklin. Sounds like they swung and missed on what's his name, Eric something at UNT, who just took the Oklahoma State job. His name's escaping me right now, but
Eric Morris.
Thank you, Eric Morris. So they swung and missed on a couple of candidates, but if Alex Golesh is your fourth or fifth candidate and that's the guy you're going to hire, then in my opinion, I think you did a pretty good job. I made this graphic here today of his record here at USF, 22-15 overall, 595 win percentage, 2-0 in bowl games, got them back into the top 25 for the first time in 7 years. And before him at USF, it was ugly. I think they were 4-20 something in the years before he got there. And got the win at Florida this year, which is massive, going to Gainesville as, a big underdog and getting that win. And then North Texas, he beat North Texas. He beat another guy that you wanted, Eric Morris, this year, who just took the Oklahoma State job. So In my opinion, I think this is a solid hire. And you look at, it's interesting to see, right? There's kind of like 50-50 from what I've seen. Arkansas fans, some are very excited about it, some very happy about it. Others who aren't as happy about it and who are kind of like, you got to be kidding me. Like, we're taking another flyer on somebody who's unproven, no head coaching experience, at the Power 4 level. And I understand that to some degree, but at the same time, he's done a good job everywhere he's been. And it's funny to see the Arkansas reaction be kind of split 50-50, and then look over at the Tennessee folks. If you start looking at the Tennessee folks who are reacting to this, there's a lot of folks who are like, there you go, Jeff Scott, 4-26. That was a nightmare. Former Clemson coach, Jeff Scott. So the Tennessee fans have been giving glowing reviews like, hey, this guy's a damn good coach. He was great as our offensive coordinator. He set records as our offensive coordinator. The offenses that he was running with Josh Heupel, they were setting records, and he did a great job. And then he goes to USF. He's done a great job there. So I think this is a really solid hire. Some people are trying to compare it to Chad Morris, and I understand that a little bit, but I did see someone out of Arkansas, they put together a tweet that was just laying all of that out. And before Chad Morris got to Arkansas, he was like 12-22 against Power 4 competition. And he had one decent year at SMU, got him to 7-5. And then he comes to Arkansas and it just completely tanks. Well, Golesh has had success. He's had success with USF. He's gone into the swamp and got that win, 2-0 in bowl games. And the USF fan base, until he left, really liked him. So I think it's a pretty solid hire for the Razorbacks. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it's our friend on the national level, Tom Fornelli, who every time there's a coaching hire, he says the same thing. And then he says, this is a great hire. I have no idea if it'll work out, which is just a great way to put it. Because I'm with you. I think everything you said leads me to believe this is a good hire. I think he's a good coach. Will it work out? I don't know. Arkansas is a tough job. And obviously for Golesh, this is his first, big time Power 4 SEC job. It doesn't get any more, meat grinder, all eyes on you than in the SEC. And Arkansas is no exception to that. So, they have high expectations, and that's why coaches there in the last, 20 plus years, modern era, are typically 3 to 5 years before they're out. So I think he certainly has all the qualities and a good track record at a, G5 school that proves he's a good coach. Will it translate to Arkansas? It's hard to say, but I certainly think, I definitely, again, I don't look at this and think, there's no chance this will work out. I think there's a good chance that he'll field a competitive team and win some ball games there. And we'll see if it's, enough to satisfy the Arkansas fans. But I wouldn't be upset if I was an Arkansas fan at all. And I think too, I don't know how many people watch Alex Golesh press conferences or interviews, but I think he will win people over that aren't on his side when it comes to that stuff. I mean, he's very driven, hard-nosed, no nonsense, like enthusiastic guy. And so, I think anybody who's not on board, I think, by the time the season rolls around, he'll have people on board.
I think so. I think that's right. And I'm looking forward to his introductory press conference, whenever that's going to be. I guess he's probably finished out the season at USF. They're going to go bowling, so maybe he coaches the bowl. All that depends, on the schools and what they work out. But I'm excited to see his introductory press conference, excited to see what that looks like. Again, if this doesn't fall apart at the 11th hour, like a Stoops situation to A&M a couple of years ago. But all signs pointing to Alex Golesh being the next coach at Arkansas.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we move into games, was there anything you wanted to mention on Kiffin? I know we talked kind of at length about it last week. I don't really think there's been any updates because there was kind of the announcement from Keith Carter / Lane Kiffin that we're done talking about it. We're going to make an announcement after the Egg Bowl, which is odd timing, obviously, because as we talked about, if you're staying, why don't you just say you're staying? But,
Yep.
That's not the case. So I guess we'll get an announcement of some sort after the Egg Bowl. But any other thoughts there before we dive into, last week's action?
Just a couple quick things. I think the first thing is that there was a report. He put out a tweet. I'm not sure if he wrote about it or not, but he put out a tweet about it. When Kiffin had his press conference earlier this week, he mentioned that, well, it's a different era. Like the press was peppering him with questions about this because obviously it's at the top of everybody's mind. Any good reporter, that's what the entire press conference is going to be about because he has made this a circus. Like it's on him as to how he has handled this. And so he, at the outset of the press conference, said, I'm not going to answer questions about that. We're keeping the focus on the players, keeping the focus on the Egg Bowl and the amazing season that we're having. But the reporters have to ask the questions. So they're asking the questions, and he kept deflecting. He said, I get it. It's a good question. I understand the question, but, we're going to focus on the Egg Bowl and, et cetera. And Aaron Torres, and then Kiffin went on to say that this is a different era, right? And players don't even know if necessarily they're going to be there. It's a lot financial focused. And so, this is kind of just the way it is. This isn't players from 10 years ago. Like, this is players now, and this stuff doesn't really distract them. It doesn't really affect them. Well, I'm not so sure about that. And we've seen Kawan Lacey with the retweet, and we've seen Trinidad Chambliss essentially came out and gave him a vote of confidence, like we're all behind Lane Kiffin, and a couple other players have done the same. But Aaron Torres of CBS, or I think maybe he's a Fox, I can't remember. But anyway, he quote tweeted one of the clips of Kiffin and said, I have it on good authority from multiple sources that there are many players in that locker room who are pissed about what is going on and the way that he's handled this. They feel like he's kind of ruining the best season in Ole Miss history, but also the season that all of these guys have worked for. History aside, these guys have been working since the preseason to get to where they are now, and now they're on the cusp of the college football playoff. They're in the national title hunt. And instead of us all talking about that and talking about the great job that Kiffin has done, for weeks now, we've been talking about, is he going to LSU? Is he going to Florida? Will he stay at Ole Miss? And so he's created this total circus. So I think that was just worth touching on. And then there was this graphic that On3 put out, and it was from Brett McMurphy, and he just kind of did a around the clock, around the table here, experts in the field or, voices in college football and what they think. And you can see here, the majority think he's going to LSU, and that's including Josh Pate there, who said on his show the other night that he's talked to Lane Kiffin directly every single day for a while now, and he doesn't know where Lane Kiffin's going, but his guess is LSU. There's a couple of holdouts there, Matt Berry and Chris Doring, Doring the Florida homer, thinking he's going to Florida, and a couple who are thinking he's staying at Ole Miss. And so, I bring that up just to say that this is anybody's guess as to where Lane Kiffin is going to end up. And I guess we'll see whether or not he stays at Ole Miss.
I think we lost Boss Man here. We'll go back to solo for a moment. So yeah, again, I think there's not a ton. Sorry, we're dealing with some technical difficulties. I was just texting Boss Man, telling him that his he got booted. But anyway, yeah, so not a ton of I guess new Lane Kiffin news. I think again, it's as we discussed last week, it's mostly all speculation at this point, and I guess we'll find out, post Egg Bowl what the deal is, one way or another. Transitioning into Cupcake Week, the games we saw last week. We'll start off with probably the biggest game, with the Sooners suffocating Mizzou 17-6. So interestingly enough, Bo Prabula did come back for Missouri, and ultimately that didn't make much of a difference. I think, my takeaways from this game really were that the Oklahoma defense is just rolling right now, and they, have done this multiple weeks in a row where they're just suffocating their opponents. And, they were all over Mizzou in this one. So much so that John Mateer in the Oklahoma offense really didn't do much of anything in this one. I mean, Mateer was 14 of 30 for 173 yards, 2 touchdowns, and I think he had 50 or 60 yards on the ground. But just that Oklahoma defense only allowing 301 total yards to Missouri. They forced 2 more turnovers on Bo Prabula picks. One of them was, late in the game. But they had 5 sacks, 8 tackles for loss. Ahmad Hardy was never able to get going. They held Missouri to 70 rushing yards after Missouri just ran for like 5 million against Mississippi State the week prior. So, I don't know how far, if we're talking college football playoffs, this Oklahoma defense can carry them, but really just a heck of a year for the Sooners to bounce back the way that they have on the back of that defense to, get through the Mateer injury and get through the schedule that they have with 1 game remaining, obviously, with LSU. So don't count your chickens before they hatch, Sooners. But, if chalk holds, they'll be going to the playoff at 10-2. And I just can't say enough about that defense and Brent Venables and that team to win games the way that they have with an offense that's really struggled most of the year. So impressive stuff from Oklahoma. What were your takeaways in this one?
Oklahoma's defense gets it done again. I mean, 6 points for Mizzou, and they only score 17 in this game. You just mentioned it. The offense, they had a couple drives there in the middle of the game, which is what really let them pull away. And once they had a couple touchdown lead, this one felt like it was over in my mind because the defense was just playing very well. But good win for Oklahoma. I mean, still in the playoff hunt with that win. So, and now it's looking like the playoffs, you're right on the cusp of them with LSU. And at the start of the season, looking at the schedule, it looks super daunting. And at times it was. And Oklahoma has weathered those storms, gotten through one of the tougher schedules in the nation. And now you're sitting here right at the end against an LSU team that you should beat. LSU looked way better at the start of the season, in the preseason. And now you're right on the cusp against an LSU team that you should beat to get into the playoff.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get to that game with Travis, so we can end it on this and go over to the Vandy, Kentucky. But LSU looks dead. 13-10 against Western Kentucky. I know Western Kentucky, Mike. Our Mike is way more into the group of 5, group of 6 teams, but Western Kentucky 13-10 in Tiger Stadium is crazy work. So I don't know what LSU is going to be able to do on Oklahoma. But anyway, speaking of crazy work, Diego Pavia, Vanderbilt, absolutely throttled Kentucky here. Give me your takeaways from this one.
That was impressive. I thought that Kentucky, after having a little bit of momentum over the past couple of weeks, would put up a better fight than they did. And Vanderbilt just came out and absolutely steamrolled them. And to me, after this performance, I mean, I think Diego Pavia, did he have 6 overall TDs? I think was what he had.
6 total touchdowns.
6 total touchdowns, 484 yards, 48 rushing yards, 33 of 39. I mean, he just carved up Kentucky all night long. And so to me, I think this catapulted him right to the top of the Heisman Trophy, standings, essentially. I don't know if he's number 1. I'm sure Fernando Mendoza is still getting a lot of pub, which is well-deserved. But he should be right there in the top 3 and right there in the race, right to the end, in my opinion, because looking at that, I know it's Kentucky, but again, Kentucky had a little bit of momentum. They were looking much better. And to do that against an SEC opponent, even still, is extraordinarily impressive. And Vandy here, ranked number 14th in the country, right on the cusp of the playoff. Diego Pavia in the preseason, Clark Lee, all of them were talking about how this is a year we need to take a step. We need to show we can do it again. Well, they're showing they can do it again, and they're showing that they're even better than they were last year. And now here we are, right, just like we talked about with Oklahoma a minute ago, on the cusp of the playoff. And if they can get a win this weekend against Tennessee, which has been difficult for them in their history, they'll be in the playoff. They very well should be in the playoff.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, shout out to our guest picker last week, Lyndon Blake, because she called this one out and said, it's Diego Pavia's senior day. They're not losing. They're going to cover. They're going to beat Kentucky, because you and I think we're both on Kentucky to cover, just thinking that, Kentucky's been playing better. Like, Vandy will probably win, but, Kentucky's doing some stuff. And they were not in this game. The Vanderbilt defense showed up. They held a pretty decent Kentucky run game with Seth McGowan to 31 total yards. Now, granted, part of that's kind of just game script stuff, because Vandy got out to such a big lead. Kentucky was forced to throw the ball, but Vandy defense showed up. This game was 45-3 going into the fourth quarter. Kentucky had 14 points in complete garbage time. You brought up Pavia. Yeah, he had 484 yards passing, 48 yards rushing, and 6 total touchdowns. So, I don't know how you look at that and think anything other than this guy's just on a different level right now. And then that's his, third or fourth game in a row going like 350 plus. He did it against Texas. He did it against Auburn. So he's on a hot streak as of late, and it's going to be very interesting to see what they can do in Neyland. That's a big one.
That's a massive one. And like you said, it was 45-3 going into the fourth quarter. So everyone knows, for those who were watching last week, that Hammer got married this weekend. So we watched the early games, and then we went to the wedding. We did the wedding, and then we went to the reception and everything. But of course, right, we're SEC football fans, and as all of us do, if we have a fall wedding, we're checking scores at certain times, right? And we've got friends pulling up games and everything. So I saw this score. One of the Vanderbilt people tweeted out the score, and I saw it come up on my notifications. And I had to do a double take. It's 45-3 Vanderbilt right now. Like, my goodness, they are laying the wood to the Wildcats. And so impressive win for them. I'm very interested to see, like you said, what can they do in Neyland, which one we'll talk about later.
Absolutely. Well, we got a couple more games. We can touch on those after, but we've got our guest picker in the green room here. So let me go ahead and bring our friend Travis L. Brown onto the screen here and welcome him in. So Travis is a reporter for KBTX down in Bryan College Station. Alex and I, Hammer, Boss Man, we are both Aggies, so we're thrilled to have you on, Travis. Welcome in.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. A couple weeks in the making. Glad to be able to make this happen.
Absolutely, absolutely. So as I said, Travis is down in Bryan College Station, working for KBTX, covering Texas A&M. You can see all of his social handles there. Twitter or X, as we're calling it these days, Travis L. Brown. Instagram by Travis L. Brown. KBTX News is a great follow on YouTube and X, as well as Instagram. So be sure to check out all of his work there. He's got just a great pulse of, the A&M fan base, not just with football, but with all the sports going on. He's always around A&M athletics. So, yeah, really appreciate you joining us. We've been watching and reading your stuff for quite a long time. So this is super fun for us, especially with it being, Texas week. So I guess we'll just start off, Travis, with a quick, easy question for you before we hop into picks. But give us, so Boss Man, Hammer, we are Aggies, but we no longer live in Bryan College Station. So I'm just curious to know, this is the best season of my lifetime. I was born in 1995, and so we've not been, 11-0, 10-0. All these records we're kind of breaking, at least as far as, my lifespan. So what is the vibe and the pulse been in Bryan College Station with this truly historic season that the Aggies are having?
Yeah, you could probably relate to this, because I think it's been the same as probably any Aggies in diaspora. And that is, it's like cautiously optimistic. Like, okay, it seems like Mike Elko has exercised demon after demon after demon, but like the battered Aggie syndrome is there too, and it's lurking, and so there's this kind of push and pull between the two of those. So I call it cautiously optimistic. Like, I think that most fans now at this point in the season expect that if there is a demon to be slayed or conquered or something like that, whether it was winning on the road, winning a ranked game on the road, coming back and finishing in November and those kinds of things. Mike Elko and his crew and these players have been able to accomplish that, but there's probably like a 1%, like a 1 or 5% feeling of like, but is that other shoe gonna drop? So yeah, y'all could probably speak to that equally as much, kind of cautiously optimistic.
Yes. So you mentioned that battered Aggie syndrome, and Aggies know it well. And now most across the SEC have heard Aggies talk about it a lot. So, they bring it up as well. But in the first half of that South Carolina game, the fever of my battered Aggie syndrome was at like 106. I mean, it came back with a vengeance, even after, all these wins. And as you mentioned, right, A&M winning in these different ways. They're beating Auburn in a tough game at home. They can win a close game. They can win a shootout at Notre Dame. They can win a ranked game on the road. All those things that you think have gotten you over the hump. And then you have a half like you did against South Carolina. And all of this, kind of like helicopters. Oh, no, are we going to do this again kind of thing. So the BAS is lurking, but here at 11-0, they have met every challenge so far. And we've talked about it a lot on the show. It feels like things are a little bit different under the Elko regime. He brings that lunch pail mentality. He talks about it all the time. He's got the buy-in from the players. And there's not a team with a soft mentality or that would overcome what they have overcome in multiple games, especially in that South Carolina game. So I think that while the BAS is lurking, I think most Aggies, like you said, are just trusting in Elko that he's going to get it done.
Yeah, the funny thing is, I'm not saying that I was like completely optimistic after that first half of South Carolina that they'd be able to do what they did. But the time that you actually, that there's a physical proof of me texting, we have a group text with Tyler Shaw, my sports director at KBTX, and Max Crawford, our meteorologist who's also an Aggie and is on we three of us have a podcast as well. And we kind of text during the games. And it was LSU at the end of the first half that I actually did text and say, this is when it's going to catch up to them. And then when they were able to overcome that at LSU, I think that there was something in South Carolina in me that was like, I think this team is going to come out at halftime. Like, I'm surprised they didn't just bring the drum corps back down and have the drummers come out at the beginning of at the second half and just kind of redo everything, play power, fire, just say like, hey, let's just kind of start this game over. We didn't like what happened the first. That was kind of the mental image I had of Mike Elko saying, let's just do this all over again and just start the second half as like if it's a new game. And basically that's what they did. So it was really that LSU game that kind of tripped me up mentally a little bit more than anything else. But of course, the South Carolina was the historic comeback too.
Right. Well, that's a good point because, Travis, you brought it up that there's been multiple demons slayed. It wasn't just the South Carolina game. It was the first half against Mississippi State or the first half against LSU or kind of the whole game against Auburn where you keep thinking something's going to happen and the defense just keeps showing up. So that's a credit to Elko, his staff, and obviously this team. I think a ton of credit to the players and the leadership that they have, within that locker room, because it takes a lot of mental toughness and just resilience that, not to throw shade, but has not really been the norm around College Station. It feels like, at least as far as results have worked out in the past. So yeah, that's awesome. That's good to hear that hopefully the BAS is the percentage of fans infected with it are slowly lowering over time. But yeah, definitely cool to hear about how things are going on the ground there. As obviously we miss being around it 24/7. So I think we can transition into picks here. So we'll pop up this leaderboard for you, Travis, and you can see there's still plenty of room up here at the top. So we've got Rivers Huey, Gabe Bach, Drew, TMU, so a couple Aggies sitting at 4-2. Our little cousin who came on one week is at 4-2. Big log jam at 3-3 with Ellie Mae, Emily Grace, Cruz, Gabe's son, Easton went 3-3. Lyndon Blake, our lovely picker from last week, went 3-3. And then we've got Daly, Chloe, Cornbread Cowboy, and Stingray bringing up the rear. So there's
all I care about is beating Gabe Bach.
We respect that.
My buddy Gabe Bach. Yeah, that's all I care about.
There you go.
We love that. So again, there's a 5-1, perhaps 6-0 week out there, and we're closing in on the final game of the regular season. So hopefully, hopefully you can have a great week this week. I think we'll pick the A&M-Texas game last because that's by far the most important game this weekend, obviously. So let's start with the Egg Bowl. So Boston, why don't you give us a quick intro here?
Sure. Well, we talked about it at the outset of the show a little bit, just updating folks on the Lane Kiffin stuff, which is where is it at? And the truth is that no one knows where it's at. We know that there's going to be some announcement after the Egg Bowl about Lane Kiffin's future. You would think that if he was going to stay at Ole Miss, he would probably have just quieted all the noise and signed an extension, and we would be just focused on the Egg Bowl and on the playoff, et cetera. So there's this whole circus surrounding Ole Miss right now. The Egg Bowl is always drunk and crazy and one of the nuttiest games of rivalry weekend, even if Mississippi State is bad, right? This one is always crazy. And so Mississippi State has played a little bit better this year. At times, they've pushed multiple teams to the brink. They've gotten a couple wins. They've gotten an SEC win. Jeff Lebby seems like he's got this team on the up and up. But at the same time, they're still much less talented than Ole Miss, and Ole Miss having one of the most historic seasons that they have ever had as well. So what are you thinking in this game? Ole Miss favored by 7.5, but they got to go to Starkville where the Cowbells will be ringing.
I want to go back to Lane Kiffin for a minute, and I think it was just a ginormous missed opportunity so far with this whole situation, because one of my favorite bits, he could have played further into one of my favorite bits in college football, and that is, there was all of these talks about maybe his family flew on private jets to Baton Rouge and Gainesville to see all this stuff. He should have sent his family to Gainesville and Baton Rouge, and he should have put Daniel Tosh on the plane with him and just kind of let the paparazzi go wild and then come back and there could have been a whole Netflix special just about that. I think it was just a ginormous missed opportunity for everybody involved. That being said, you're right. Egg Bowl is always just absolutely drunk on its 14th beer by the time it starts. I think there's going to be a little bit of theme of my picks here as I've looked. I want to try to find some upsets in this situation and everything, but everything just feels so chalky at this point. I think Ole Miss gets the job done in this game, goes to the playoff, and plus that's kind of the drama that everybody wants too, right? They want Ole Miss to win, to be in the playoff, and then like if Lane goes to LSU or Florida, like you're leaving a playoff team. I think everybody kind of secretly, outside of Ole Miss, outside of Oxford, wants a little bit of that drama, wants to see Ole Miss in the playoff, and then see Lane make a decision with that looming over him. So I think for the fun of it too, we're going to go Ole Miss.
I like that. Yeah, it's going to be fascinating. I'm with you though. I mean, Ole Miss is playing well even through these issues the last couple of weeks. Trinidad Chambliss playing at an extremely high level, and Lane Kiffin has had them humming. So the only thing that makes me question this is that Lane Kiffin is due a stinker. Every year there's one, maybe two, and he's come close this year. That Washington State game early in the year, that could have been it, but they got the win, and so maybe in the Egg Bowl, this is the one where he lays an egg.
and to talk actual football X's and O's, I really like Kewan Lacey, and he does seem to have some of his bigger games against better competition. So I think this is one of those games that he turns when the lights are a little bit brighter. He has seemed to turn it up, and I think it'll be a good game. What better asset to have in a rivalry game when emotions are high and everything than a running back that can keep possession and kind of take air out of a big game at times when needed.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's a great point. And we've seen, Mississippi State struggle against the run. Obviously, Missouri kind of went wild on them. So this definitely on paper looks like a big, Kewan Lacey game where he's going to get a lot of carries, a lot of touches, and they're going to try to, like you said, take the air out of that place, get the cowbells quieted down, and just let him go to work. All our friend Mike Huseman here has a quick shameless plug. So Mike Huseman of Off Season After Dark is hopping on with Stephen Willis of Locked On Ole Miss for the Egg Bowl preview Friday morning. So for all you football crazy fans, check that out on Friday morning. But our next game can give us a quick intro here. This one is kind of a stinker. I'm not really sure who exactly cares in this game, because we've seen Florida. I'll give Florida some credit post Napier. They've had some games where it felt like they were really giving it their all, but they've also had a few where it didn't quite look like that. So I don't know what the Gators have left in the tank. Obviously, this game will be in the Swamp, so they've got that going for them. In the Florida State, I think they, in terms of motivation, if they win this, they'll go bowling, so they've got that going for them. But the whole Mike Norvell experience seems to be in a bad place. I know they announced he is coming back, but that doesn't seem to be, received with a lot of glowing reviews out of Tallahassee. I think there's a lot of people that would prefer he not return. So sort of a zombie team in Florida going up against a at least very inconsistent Seminole team in Florida State in the Swamp, with the Gators favored by 4.5. Who do you have in this one, Travis?
I'm gonna give a shout out to the legend of A&M beat and the BCS area, and that is the one Robert Cessna from the Bryan College Station Eagle, because he always puts together the prognosticator panel, which is a pick'em panel, and he always has a crummy game of the week. This is the crummy game of the week. This is just an absolute drag, man. I this one I have such little feel on. Florida State has the better record. I really do believe, if you put it on paper, Florida has better talent than Florida State. They have some really good talent out there on the football field. And so I think I'm going to go with Florida because I like DJ Lagway when he is clicking. Dallas Wilson earlier in the season was doing pretty good stuff. I don't know. The defense was at times pretty good. Mm-hmm. This one was one I hadn't decided on up until this point, so I'm doing it in the moment. I think I'm going to go with the Gators.
I like it. Yeah, to the stinker game of the week, I think you could also translate that to this is a game you just shouldn't bet on, because like you said, it's very hard to get a read on this.
Should you bet at all during rivalry week? That's my question. That's my advice. That's my pick'em advice is don't bet during rivalry week.
That is sage advice. I think a lot of people out there would probably save a lot of money if they avoided betting probably at all, but definitely on rivalry week. Well, let's go to another long-standing rivalry, although very one-sided, for the Vandy Tennessee game. Boss man, why don't you take us home here?
All right. So this rivalry, Tennessee has won 6 straight in this one. There was a couple wins vacated for the Pruitt era, but whatever. Nobody cares about vacated wins. So 6 straight in this rivalry for Tennessee. Vanderbilt won 3 straight from 2016 to 2018, but have not won since. So they want to win in the worst way, especially with the playoffs on the line. Pretty much a win and you're in scenario is what it feels like for Vanderbilt. You've got Diego Pavia, who has been playing extraordinarily well for almost all of the season, and he could have his Heisman moment in this game. So I'm interested to see what happens here in Knoxville. You also have Diego Pavia, who for the last 3 games, 365 yards passing, 377, and 484, which was last week against Kentucky, which we touched on at the outset of the show. Tennessee's offense very good as well, obviously, under Josh Heupel. But do you think that Tennessee's pass defense is going to be able to stop Diego Pavia in this attack enough to be able to win this game? Or maybe it's a shootout. What are you thinking here?
This is my one non-chalky pick. I am super high on Diego Pavia. In fact, I'm not sure numbers, but he is in my top 4 for a Heisman pick as things sits right now, because, and I know a lot of this had to do with what they were able to do against Kentucky, but Kentucky is an SEC opponent. I mean, he leads the SEC in completion percentage, in passing touchdowns. He's like 6th in rushing yards. He is leads in passing yards per attempt. Passing touchdowns, rushing yards. He's 10th, which that includes running backs and everything else. I mean, he is touchdowns responsible before, number 1 in the SEC. He has Eli Stowers out there, who, shout out, I won the Heisman with on my college football 26 dynasty. So big shout out to Eli Stowers there on that. Man, I really like what this Vanderbilt team has. I really like Diego Pavia. I think that he knows what's on the line with this, and there really could be some Heisman moment material. I'm going to go Vanderbilt in this one.
I think that's a great pick. I'm high on Diego Pavia. I've been talking about him since the preseason. I did pick Vanderbilt to go on the under, so Vandy fans, don't hate me for that one. But I did issue an apology on Twitter, I think around week 6, to Vanderbilt football for taking the under on their win total on the season because they have played exceptional all year. And frankly, right now, I think they're the better team, probably the better coach team, which I like Josh Heupel. I think he's a great coach. But Clark Lee, over the last 2 years, has really shown that, in my opinion, one of the better coaches in the SEC, doing more with less. And
Clark Lee, a lot of ties back with Bowling Green with Mike Elko. It was when Mike Elko became the third down guru that he was. Clark Lee was working at a desk right there beside him and kind of helped him and watched him do that. So for the Aggies out there, Clark Lee has a lot of ties in there with Mike Elko.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a good call out for some Aggie knowledge. Clark Lee doing a great job. Seems like a great just a great guy, great fit at Vandy. So yeah, I'm with both of y'all. I think I would lean Vandy here and just, I for the story, I hope they get it done because I like, what Pavia brings and, Tennessee, I've nothing against them, but this is a good story for Vanderbilt if they could finish off a 10-2 season with a win, on the road in Neyland against a bitter rival.
I just really wish this game was in Nashville again, because after that Alabama game, there was not anything more fun than following the goalposts down Broadway by people posting videos on Twitter. Like it was just you would just refresh and somebody captured a new block and somebody captured, and that was most fun you could have on a Saturday night.
Absolutely,
100%.
Yeah. Well, thanks to the new schedule in the SEC with Oklahoma and or Texas joining. Speaking of bitter rivals, long-standing rivals, we have LSU and Oklahoma squaring off on rivalry weekend, which feels strange for both schools. But this is an interesting game. I mean, LSU, similar to Florida, kind of a zombie team with a fired head coach, and they had a kind of a nail-biter last week against Western Kentucky, which was strange. It doesn't look like Nussmeier's going to play again, so it'll be President Van Buren stepping in for the third or fourth week in a row for LSU. And then on the Oklahoma side, we talked about this too at the outset of the show. Like, it's hard to get a full read on them because a lot of these games, especially against the better competition, they've needed defensive touchdowns to score, and that's not necessarily something you can always count on. However, they've been getting them, and despite the offense, sputtering for long stretches, here they are at 9-2, number 8 in the college football playoff rankings. Very much feels like a win and you are in scenario, and they're favored by 10.5 at home in Norman. So do you think Oklahoma gets the win and, most likely seals their college football playoff bid and covers, or is it a little closer, or do you even think an LSU upset could be brewing here?
I have to admit, I know this game's in Norman, but I've been to every SEC venue except for Kentucky and Vanderbilt because of the way that the schedules have gone and everything like that. And LSU at night, I know it's everyone says it, but Tiger Stadium at night, best college football environment there is. But I'm gonna pull the Lee Corso here and say Oklahoma's gonna run away with it. Oklahoma has the best defense in the best defensive front in the SEC, and if not maybe the country. And they really were able to turn it on. The interesting thing in talking about what we're going to talk about in a little bit, of course, Texas offensive line is one of the biggest struggles they've had, and yet somehow they managed to hold back Oklahoma's defensive front, which I think is one of the best in the country, but that's a whole nother story. I think John Mateer, when he was cranking early in the season, running the ball, throwing the ball, I thought he was as much of a Heisman pick as anybody. Then he went and hurt his hand. And really, when you look at when Oklahoma struggled, it was because he came back a little bit too early. So I think this is absolutely Oklahoma. And I think it's going to be, they're going to cover the spread probably pretty easily.
Yeah, it certainly feels that way. Like you said, I guess this isn't a long-standing rivalry, but, a big spread, rivalry week gets you a little nervous. But, yeah, it does feel like LSU they're kind of lost. They're kind of just hoping for the season to end. And meanwhile, Oklahoma is, bought in. Whatever Venables is doing, and has done this year, it's been a phenomenal coaching job by him to navigate that schedule. And obviously his identity is built on defense, and they have delivered this fall for sure. Let's go down to the Iron Bowl. Like I said, we'll pick the Aggie game last. So let's hit the Iron Bowl here. Go ahead, boss man.
All right. So you can see here right on our cryon, Jordan Hare voodoo. There is some Indian burial ground stuff going on, ghosts in that stadium, and those folks in Tuscaloosa know all about that. So I have seen Tide fans all over Twitter this week just talking about how nervous they are for this game, which is funny because they fired their coach. This has been a complete disaster for most of the year in Auburn. However, this game, like the Egg Bowl, drunk just about every year. I mean, how many plays have we seen in the last 5 years, 10 years over the course of this series where you had stuff like kick six happen, you had the Gravedigger play, you had the 4 overtime game with Bryce Young when Alabama was at the top of the rankings and needed to escape Auburn. So this game really feels like to me that it's on Ty Simpson because Alabama hasn't been able to run the ball very well this year. Auburn has a pretty good defense. And then on Auburn's side, Auburn, it sounds like, is going to start Ashton Daniels at quarterback. Last week, they started Deuce Knight to get him some playing time against, I think it was Mercer, their Cupcake opponent. So this week, Ashton Daniels back in. Ashton Daniels played pretty well against Vanderbilt in his lone start. And then he played pretty well in the second half, even though Hugh Freeze didn't really unleash him against Arkansas to end up getting the win, though that one was a lot on the defense because of the turnovers. So what are you thinking in this one? Does Alabama run away with this one, or is this one another drunk Iron Bowl as we've seen so many times in the past?
I don't think Alabama runs away with it, but I do think Alabama wins it. I think, as Aggie fans and me covering the team, everyone was a little shocked at what happened in Kyle Field when A&M only managed to beat them 16-10. But I think as it come to find out, Auburn's defense is pretty salty. What was it? There was a while there this season, I can't remember the exact point, but there was only three teams in the country that held opponents to 24 points or less. That was Ohio State, Indiana, and Auburn. Things have settled out. They're not quite on that same realm at this point. Pro Football Focus has them as the 35th power ranked defense in the country, which is still pretty good for a team of their record and what they've been able to do. But the game's at Jordan Hare. By the way, shout out to my friend Matt Stahl over at AL.com. If you haven't read his story where they actually took real paranormal ghost hunters out to Jordan Hare to run experiments to see if it actually was haunted and wrote about it. It's a great read for rivalry weekend. I think Alabama wins this. Too much at stake. Too much. If you want to talk about bulletin board material, motivational material, getting left out of the playoff last year, I think is big motivation for them to go out and win this game. So I don't think Auburn has enough on offense. They might have enough on defense to make it a sloppy, slower scoring game, but I don't think they have enough firepower. You going back to that comment, the thought of them being one of the 3 teams that kept teams under 24 points at that point in the season. They couldn't score 24 points to win games. So case in point, I think Alabama wins.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. I feel the same way. I mean, it's been interesting to watch Alabama. I mean, the first game against Florida State, out of the gate, I think was kind of an anomaly. And then they've had their scares again, at times this year. And then Oklahoma ends up getting them in Tuscaloosa. So I know that one, burned Tide fans a little bit. So there have been some close calls. South Carolina against Alabama again this year, for the Tide. So I think that's where some of the, little bit of nerves are coming from with Alabama fans, because otherwise, just looking at this game on paper and, take away the history of the Iron Bowl and all that, Alabama is the better team and Alabama should win this game. So I have a similar feeling to you on this one.
All right. Well, here for the, the grand finale, the Taj Mahal, the A&M-Texas game. So we've had a lot of new people jump on the stream. Our friend Travis L. Brown here covers the Aggies for KBTX in Bryan College Station. So he's boots on the ground down there. He's, got a great read on this Aggie team and fan base. So we're excited to get his thoughts. To intro this, I just want to say, obviously, as Aggies, we're thrilled that this game is back. Our dad is an Aggie, so we were born into this and have been, living and dying our entire lives, really, on Thanksgiving. Well, it used to be Thanksgiving night back in the day when we were growing up. And, when this rivalry was gone, it felt just incomplete, that we didn't get to play Texas every year. So thrilled that it's back. And this will be the first installment back in Austin. And there's a lot of talk because, A&M being 11-0, even with a loss here, is likely a lock for the playoff. But obviously this is, a rivalry game. Everybody wants to win. I will also just say for the record, and Travis, I imagine you feel the same, having covered the team, like I want to go to the SEC championship game badly. And so this game, not just the rivalry aspect, like I really want A&M to be in Atlanta and to be on that stage. And so for the second year in a row, the only thing standing in their way is Texas. And last year, A&M did not get it done. It was a pretty sloppy game, although the defense kept it close. This year, A&M's offense is really humming most of the time. They'll go through some stretches, but it feels like A&M should be able to go in there and score points. At the same time, Arch, for all the hype and then anti-hype he got, has put together a good month of November, and he seems to be playing better. And we know we're going to get, Texas's best shot. They likely out of the playoff race, a situation, A&M has been in many times throughout this rivalry, want nothing more than to spoil A&M's, SEC title hopes. So the Aggies are favored by 3.5 here on the road in DKR. Give us the rundown on this one, Travis. Let us know what you're thinking.
Yeah, so I mean, this is the most rivalry-y game of all of them, maybe besides the Egg Bowl, but I still think Ole Miss has a bigger edge in that game. I mean, this one really has a lot on the not only a lot on the line, but just it's as close to a pick'em, I think, as there is out there. I think that it comes down to 2 aspects of the game. Which offensive line plays better for each of the teams? Both A&M, just to give an idea of the defensive fronts that both these teams have, A&M is second in the country in sacks, averaging 3.55 per game. Texas is third, averaging 3.63 a game. However, Texas's offensive line is 93rd in the country in tackles for loss allowed and 78th in the country for sacks allowed. A&M, first in the country for tackles for loss allowed, 11th in the country for sacks allowed. They certainly have had the better offensive line play. They're finalists for the Joe Moore Award, which goes to the best offensive line in the country. And so if A&M's offensive line can hold steady against a very good Texas defensive front, I think that gives them a huge advantage in this game because those defensive fronts are going to be what affect the game the most in this. I think that the second thing is special teams. You look at punt returners for both teams. You have Casey Concepcion for the Aggies, who has been outstanding. Had that the first time he touched the ball on a punt return against UTSA, he took it to the house. He's averaging about 20 yards per run. The LSU game, when I said it seemed like everything was lost for the season at that point, he comes back and gets that punt return early in the second half that kind of jump started everything. On the Texas side, it's Ryan Niblett. He's averaging about 24 yards per return and had huge runs against Oklahoma in the Red River rivalry. And then he had the game-tying touchdown on a punt return against Mississippi State that went to overtime, and Texas was able to win that. I think if Texas's offense maybe has some of the struggles it's had, it can get itself back into the game with a couple of big returns from Ryan Niblett. I think that is a huge factor in this game. All that being said, I do think that the Aggies just still have a little bit more firepower on offense. The defense has looked great. This should be a game that A&M wins. In everything we've done this week, I've had A&M winning 38-31. They've stayed pretty close to their scoring average most all season, which is 39 points. So I'll take it 38. The thing I don't like, I know one of my colleagues had A&M winning by a field goal. When you talk about special teams, don't like the kicking situation for A&M right now. Both Randy Bond and Jared Zirkle look like they have a little bit of a case of the yips at times. And I don't think A&M fans or A&M coaching staff wants them to be in a situation where they need a late field goal to win it. So if they're going to win it, I think it's going to be 38-31.
I love that. Obviously, I love that because that means A&M wins and covers. But I'm glad you brought up the special teams because I think that's a great thing to be aware of coming into this game. Right? Is not just A&M's kicking that's a little on the fritz here, but also the punt returners because Casey Concepcion has been phenomenal, but so has Ryan Niblett. I mean, there were games there during that, kind of middle stretch of Texas' schedule, whether it was Oklahoma or Mississippi State, you kind of named them, Kentucky, where, as an Aggie fan, I'm rooting against Texas watching these games. And I'm like, pacing around my living room, like, stop kicking the ball to Niblett because he's winning these games. Arch and the offense are not moving the ball, but he's either running it back for a touchdown or he's putting them inside the red zone. So A&M's got to be very careful in the kicking game to, if they're going to kick to him, just, obviously cover well or make him fair catch it, because if he gets a lane, he's a guy that can change a game in an instant.
And I think the other thing too, we talked about this on our podcast earlier today, Mike Elko on his radio show after the South Carolina game was kind of going on a little bit of a monologue talking about how fans might always say when a team in the first half doesn't come out, it's because they were asleep. They were sleepwalking. They didn't have enough energy. They didn't want it enough. And he said, no, that's not at all the case here. It was a team that was prepared, did bring enough energy, made some mistakes, and then wanted it too badly and was trying to force things, trying to push. And that's kind of what got them in that hole against South Carolina. That's the only other thing from an A&M perspective that kind of has my eyebrow raised. I want to see when they come out. This is going to be an emotional game. And not only is it, I think it's one thing to be at home in Kyle Field and to see all that energy. It's another thing to get to go play villain in Austin and kind of have to bring your own energy with that. And I wonder how overhyped both teams are going to be. But if A&M, we've seen at times at the beginning of the Notre Dame game, kind of at the beginning of the South Carolina game, there's been times that Marcel Reed has come out a little bit overhyped and had some accuracy issues. Now he's had Mario Craver, Casey Concepcion, that especially at the Notre Dame game really bailed him out a couple times until he kind of got settled into the game. I think that's going to be a big thing to watch are these guys a little bit overamped, and how quickly, which is the team that settles into the game more quickly, because I think that's going to be the team that has at least the immediate advantage in the game.
I think you're right about that. One thing to say on that, you mentioned, playing the villain role for A&M walking into Austin. Marcel Reed has talked about this, this season. People have asked him because he's played very well on the road. And so, he seems to really embrace that villain role. And sometimes maybe it's even, helped him in these road games more so than in Kyle Field, because at times in Kyle Field this year, he has seemed like the energy has been too much, at least in like the first quarter or the first half. the LSU game being the exception until the second half where he played very well. But I'm interested to see, kind of like you said, this will be a lot. I could see it being an ugly first quarter. Who settles down first? And does Marcel Reed embrace that villain role? And we talked about Diego Pavia earlier. He's got the potential Heisman moment out here, right? Well, Marcel Reed has had a couple Heisman moments that have been called back for holding calls, some of them phantom, others of them, probably deserved. But he has a chance here, and there's a lot on his shoulders to get this win in Austin. I know the Aggies are 11-0, but they want this one bad. I've talked to many Aggies. I'm sure you know many as well who would say the same thing. We would go 8-4 again to beat Texas in Austin. So the fact that we're 11-0 and have a chance to beat them in Austin and go in and get a win to go to the SEC title, you hope the moment isn't too big for them, and that Marcel Reed can settle down early and not try to take the temperature down, and then let's just go play ball because we're the better team.
Yeah, I think that's going to be huge. I think how the defensively too, how you looked at the early in that LSU game, Cassius Howell was able to take the crowd out of the game with an early sack, and I don't think I've ever seen a man possessed like he was after that early sack, just yelling at anybody. The funny thing is they went to commercial, and when I was following with my binoculars, he wasn't even in the team huddle during that. He was just pacing back and forth, like about 10 yards away from the huddle, just like talking to himself like a crazy person. I think they're going to need a little bit of that early in this game, but yeah, it's gonna be exciting. It's gonna be a cool experience for me. This is, of course, last year was the first A&M-Texas game I got to cover because, of course, for the 10 years or the 9 years prior I'd been here, the game didn't happen. But it's not my first time covering a game in Thanksgiving at DKR. When A&M left and TCU came into the Big 12, I was covering TCU for the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. They took over A&M's schedule. So every time TCU played at Texas for the I think it was the 4 years after that switch made, they played TCU on Thanksgiving and DKR, and I covered 2 of those games. So get a little bit of the vibe. Of course, it is not nearly the stakes and the rivalry of this game, but Thanksgiving football in the state and at some of the state's biggest colleges is always a cool thing to see as well.
Definitely. Well, one last thing to say, you mentioned Cassius Howell just acting like a crazy person after he got that sack at LSU. When he did that, it made me, and he was pacing and everything, it made me think he was almost channeling former Texas A&M defensive lineman Michael Clemens, who, when he was with the New York Jets, you may remember he was on the sideline, and he went after they won some game. They were in a rival stadium, and he was pointing at fans. Screw you and you and you, like you can get it and you can get it and you can get it. So hopefully in this game he can channel his inner Michael Clemens again.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, Travis, thanks so much for joining us, man. We've got one question here before we get you out of here. You've already given us plenty of time, so super generous of you. We can't thank you enough. But we ask all of our guests. So our name, Biscuits and SEC, sort of just a play on biscuits and gravy, I suppose. But we love biscuits, and so we wanted to incorporate that. So we ask everybody, your favorite biscuit spot in Bryan College Station. And any Thanksgiving plans? Obviously, you're covering the game, but of course, hopefully you're enjoying some time tomorrow. Yeah, tomorrow on Thanksgiving.
Yeah. Well, this was an easy question because I like my favorite spot right now in BCS is Stella Southern Cafe, which is pretty close to where I live, right off Highway 6, and it's like one of those biscuit brunch places. So I'll either get biscuit French toast and chicken. So it's like kind of like a chicken and waffles thing, but they do it with biscuit French toast. Or they have a sandwich called the SEC, which is a sausage, egg, and cheese that's on a biscuit. And it's like a burger sized biscuit. It's not like a mini sandwich. And you can get the biscuit French toasted. So it's like a French toasted sandwich. It's amazing. It's just the best thing. So it's like my favorite spot in town right now. So that's easy. But yeah, Thanksgiving, I mentioned covering those games early in my career at the Star-Telegram. The Thanksgiving for a sports writer is kind of a passing holiday. But I will say, and I've told my mom this to her face, the years that I wasn't covering the Texas or TCU game, when they were away, I would help cover the Cowboys games, and the best Thanksgiving spread I've ever had is in the Cowboys press box. So I miss those days a little bit. But yeah, my parents are coming down here. In fact, they might eat. They're in the other room, so they're hearing me talk. They just walked in, and we're gonna do Thanksgiving dinner tomorrow, and then hit the road to Austin on Friday for what should be a crazy game.
Beautiful. Well, happy Thanksgiving.
Awesome.
Yeah, happy Thanksgiving to you and your folks. Thank you again for coming on. I'll flash your graphic up here with all your social stuff, but also plug your podcast. So the podcast you do with your KBTX colleagues, let the people know.
Yeah, we have the Aggie Game Day Extra podcast. It's just we post it on kbtx.com. That's the video version, and it's on YouTube, I believe, Max Crawford. Actually, you really need to go listen to the YouTube version because we can't use our music on the YouTube version because of their algorithms and whatnot. So Max Crawford, for those of you who might know, the meteorologist, follow him on Twitter or whatever, he actually a cappella sang our intro music, and we use his a cappella singing from that for our music, and that it's great. You should listen to it. It makes for the whole experience. But yeah, it's on kbtx.com. You can find it on Apple, Spotify, all the rest, and we break down everything. And the cool part about that is we have a meteorologist on the show who's an Aggie fan, so he breaks everything down with us for sports. And then if you want to know what the weather is going to be like in Austin this weekend, you can listen there, and he gives a little bit of a weather forecast. So that's always a fun little aspect too.
That's fantastic stuff. Well, thanks again, Travis. Appreciate you joining us. Go say hello to your folks. And again, happy Thanksgiving and gig 'em.
Thanks guys.
Yep.
Thanks, Travis.
All right, everybody. Thanks again to Travis. Obviously, here's all of his social handles. So at Travis_L_Brown on X, and then at by Travis_L_Brown on Instagram, and then KBTX News, the outlet that he works for, and also KBTX.com to get his podcast. All right. Boss man, do you want to real quick touch on the, Tennessee-Florida game? How about that?
Yeah.
And we can wrap up week 13 and then close out the show.
Yeah, for sure. So we should touch on Texas and Arkansas too before we get into the final one. But Tennessee, Florida, Vols exercise some demons. I mean, finally get a win in the Swamp. I think it had been 22 or 23 years, 20 plus years. First time since they won in Gainesville since 2003. So they really wanted this one badly. They got it against a bad Florida team. The Vols run game was ridiculous in this game. 51 carries, 248 yards, 3 TDs as a team. And so got to give credit to Josh Heupel in this one to go down to Gainesville and get a win. And, look, the other part of this too is Florida has pushed teams at times this year. I mean, they pushed Ole Miss a couple of weeks ago. They beat Texas early in the year. So it's not – I said bad Florida team, and they are pretty bad. But at times they are, good enough to beat you and can push you. So good for the Vols to go down there and get a win, exercise those demons, and walk out of the Swamp with a win. I know that Tennessee fans have been coveting that one for a long time. So congratulations to them.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I don't have obviously, we brought it up. I got married this past weekend, so I didn't watch this game. I didn't watch really any game other than a little bit of the Mizzou OU game. But it just looked like Tennessee came in there, on a mission, wanted to exercise the demons, did. And that, the last couple of games I've been talking about, Florida kind of feels like a zombie team. And I don't, hey, I'm not judging. I don't blame those kids because it's been a very disappointing season. Your coach got fired. But, when you look at a team late in the year who doesn't have a coach, doesn't have a lot to play for, they're not even eligible to make a bowl, teams can run on them because nobody wants to stick their nose in there and get popped to stop the run. And Kentucky ran it all over them. Ole Miss, although Florida kept that close, Ole Miss ran it all over them, and then Tennessee ran it all over them because, man, if you're 3-8 now, as Florida is, like filling that gap sucks, and it's a lot easier to fill the gap when you're playing for something on the line, and obviously Tennessee, still playing for stuff, and they came in there and took it to Florida. So
that's right. Well, hey, by the way, before we get into Texas, Arkansas. This is Hammer. This was the wedding. I figure we ought to have some wedding pictures up here. He got married to his beautiful bride, Jenny, now Jenny Keeler. So Hank and Jenny Keeler, congratulations to them. That is Hammer right there in the middle, getting thrown up by our fraternity brothers who were attending the wedding. Just, huzzah, huzzah, huzzah.
I was getting airborne.
Hammer,
It was higher than I thought. I felt like a cheerleader.
I was a little worried about you, not going to lie. That was me taking that picture. I was a little bit far away. And then on the right there, that is our brother Cade, Hank there in the middle, and then Boss Man over there on the right. So we will feature Cade, or as we like to call him, Chuck, a little bit later in the show. But all right, we can get back to Texas and Arkansas here. So I'll let you start off on this one. Tell me your thoughts on this.
Yeah, so I didn't have a ton. Again, I didn't actually get eyes on this game, but we talked about it a little bit with Travis there leading into the Texas game. Like, hey, I mean, not surprising because Arkansas has been bad defensively, but Arch had another pretty good game. Goes for 389 yards, 4 touchdowns, doesn't have a turnover. I saw Taylor Green went down, so the Arkansas backup came in and, didn't play bad. KJ Jackson, I thought he, was solid in relief. To me, though, it's kind of another game where it's like Arkansas hangs tough with somebody, but A, because their defense is not very good, but B, they just shoot themselves in the foot. They outgained Texas in this one, 512 to 490. I mean, close, but we're right there and outgained them slightly. But they lost the turnover battle 0-2. And if you just look down, the drive chart, Arkansas settled for too many field goals. Texas was able to punch it in. Arkansas settled for too many field goals, and you give up 2 possessions to turnovers. Texas doesn't, and that's your ball game.
Yeah, that one interception by Taylor Green was pretty bad, where he was getting a lot of pressure and he just tried to kind of flip it up to his tight end, and it ended up floating on him because he got hit as he threw, and it ends up right in the breadbasket of the Texas defender. So that was bad. I can't remember. I think Texas turned that one into points because they turned just about everything into points in this game. Obviously, 52 points they scored in this one. So yes, it's again that story of Arkansas. I said it before the game. Arkansas cannot shoot themselves in the foot. This team just finds ways to lose games. They figure out ways to shoot themselves in the foot, and they can't do that in this game if they have any chance to beat Texas and Austin. And what did they do? Shot themselves in the foot a couple times, lose the turnover battle, and settled for too many field goals, like you said. So that was the game there. And for Texas's credit, Arch played a very good game, and the offense was humming. And so Texas defense gives up 37 points, over 500 yards. If you're an Aggie fan, that's got to make you feel pretty dadgum good going into this weekend on Friday. But for Texas, that actually, especially on offense, should give you confidence going into this Texas A&M game. Texas A&M, had some trouble with Arkansas at times this year. First half of South Carolina, they had difficulty stopping Lenora Sellers. So Texas has to be confident going into this game with how their offense played, and maybe Arch is finally rounding into form, the form that we thought we were going to see all year from him. So Texas got to have confidence, especially at home, going into this one and getting a big win against the Hogs.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's close it out here. It's Thanksgiving, so we'll give it the Muschamp Coach of the Week and then our Biscuit of the Week. So it looks like you put together the Muschamp Coach of the Week. Go ahead and intro us here.
Yeah, so let me find, where's our Muschamp? There's Muschamp. So we do this every week. If you're new to Biscuits and SEC, we've got 400 of you watching us right now. We appreciate every single one of you joining us. We know there's a lot of family stuff going on, lots going on for Thanksgiving, so we appreciate all of you joining us. So if you're new to Biscuits and SEC, we do this every single week. We name a Muschamp Coach of the Week. We're not joking with Coach Muschamp here. We love Coach Muschamp. Didn't go as he would have hoped at Florida and at South Carolina, but he's been a great coach around the game for a long time, and he's passionate. He's punching whiteboards. He's got the blood running down his face, headbutting players. He's in players' faces. He's all over the refs. But kids who played for him absolutely love him. To this day, you can ask the players who played for him. They all love him. And so he was a player's coach, did things the right way, and exuded the passion of college football while he was on the sidelines. And we miss him on the sidelines. So every week we name a Muschamp Coach of the Week who best exemplifies that passion for college football. And this week, there was a couple that we could have done. We could have given it to Clark Lee. Clark Lee has won it before. They're having an incredible year at Vanderbilt, and that insane win over Kentucky where they just blew the doors off of them. No pun intended. Clark Lee in the postgame in the locker room. Go Dores. He had a great video that came out on social media. But he ends up being the runner-up this week because I think there was something a little bit more poignant that I wanted to play, and it's a little bit different than our typical Muschamp Coach of the Week. But our Muschamp Coach of the Week this week is the new head coach at Virginia Tech, James Franklin, in his opening press conference talking about his friend Brent Pry, who preceded him at Virginia Tech, which is something you don't see very often. So here's the clip.
I always say I'm not going to get emotional, and then I get emotional. So, Brent Pry's a good friend. Gosh. Brent Pry's dad was my offensive coordinator in college. Gosh. Brent's dad was my offensive coordinator in college. I've known Brent for over 30 years. Brent's first year of coaching was my senior year at the Harvard of the Pennsylvania State Athletic Conference, East Stroudsburg University. I know you guys are all very familiar with it. And then Brent and his family was with me at Vanderbilt all 3 years, and then I think for our first 7 years at Penn State. So I got a ton of respect for Brent and his family. I know he poured his heart and soul into this place. I know this place is better today because of
There it is. James Franklin talking about his friend Brent Pry. And you just don't often see a coach talking about their predecessor in that way. A lot of times they're throwing him under the bus and kind of taking, veiled shots like, well, we didn't have much left in the cupboard here. And, we had to rebuild this thing from the ground up and all that. So I know that James Franklin knew him for a long time. And so there's a long-standing relationship there. Brent Pry was his defensive coordinator at Vanderbilt. But I just thought it was cool, that he went in there and made a point to mention Brent Pry and the work that he put in at Virginia Tech, and ultimately didn't work out for Brent Pry. But I thought that was a very classy move from James Franklin. And, hey, some people think that that's phony stuff. And James Franklin is very PR trained and, very, dots his I's and crosses his T's when he's in front of the media. But that to me seemed like a very authentic moment. And if you talk to people throughout the industry, folks will tell you that James Franklin is who he says he is. He's a good man. His players love him. Players at Penn State, when he got fired, were not happy about it because they loved him and they felt that they had let Coach Franklin down. So thought that was a cool moment from Coach Franklin. Coach Franklin is your Muschamp Coach of the Week.
Yep, that's a great nominee. We need more of that. We need more, just upstanding people willing to speak like that about somebody else in the industry. So good on James Franklin. We will close it out with our Biscuit of the Week. So we also do this every week. Thanks again, everybody, for joining us. We got a big show tonight. A lot of y'all out there watching, which is amazing. So kind of like I just said to Travis there before we got him off of here, but Biscuits and SEC, we love Southern cuisine, Southern food, in particular biscuits, because they're a big part of that. And so we like to feature a biscuit here every week. If you want to be featured on the show, like our friend Captain Biscuit, our friend Rick, who is an avid viewer of our show, which we appreciate, and he sends us biscuits all the time. We're happy to feature them. So if it's a homemade recipe or you go out to eat, shoot us a DM, an email, whatever. There's a million ways to get in touch with us, and we'll feature it on the show. You put this one together as well, so I will let you, give us the lowdown on our Biscuit of the Week.
You bet. So last night we were hanging out with family. We had an early Thanksgiving on Monday night. And so Tuesday night we all got back together, wanted to continue having some fun together and playing some games and catching up with everybody. So last night we ended up getting takeout here in Fort Collins because everyone is still here in Fort Collins in the aftermath of Hammer's wedding. So here is the Biscuit of the Week from Chuck Biscuit, future firefighter. This is his meal that he got last night. He got fried chicken with a biscuit on the side and some roasted Brussels sprouts. And there was some gravy along with this, by the way. So he had some gravy for that fried chicken. And I had a chicken pot pie from this place. This was Ginger and Baker in Fort Collins, Colorado. And the chicken pot pie was really good. Very, very good. But I kept looking across the table at Chuck Biscuit over here and seeing what he was eating, and I was just jealous as all get out, and actually a little frustrated that whoever it was that ordered this didn't order me the meal with the biscuit, because as I told them, I work for an outfit called Biscuits and SEC, biscuitsandsec.com, and love to write about biscuits and Southern food and Southern culture. So I saw this and I was like, you would think that this would be the number one on my list of things to get, but it's okay. The chicken pot pie, also a great Southern dish. Love the chicken pot pie as well. But that is Chuck right there, our youngest brother. His real name is Cade. He's going to be a future firefighter. That's for real. He is going to fire school here soon. Just got admitted to the academy or whatever they call it. I'm not sure, but he's going to be a local firefighter. So thank him for his service, and eventually wants to go to the Coast Guard. So thank him for his service twice. But thank you to Chuck Biscuit here for the meal that he had last night, for sharing this with us. Chicken fried chicken with a good old biscuit on the side from Ginger and Baker in Fort Collins, Colorado. Like I said, I was jealous. It looked pretty daggum good.
It does look good. And I haven't had that meal from Ginger and Baker, but I've been there a few times. It's a good spot. It's a very good spot. So good stuff. Great show. Appreciate y'all watching. We've got over 400 of y'all on here the day before Thanksgiving. Hard to believe, but we got a fun week ahead of football. Soak it up. It's the last week of the regular season. Hard to believe that we're here, but everybody, sign up for the Biscuits and SEC newsletter. You can see the link below. Follow us on X. Subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. That would be great. We're trying to grow that, posting a lot of content there and pumping out a lot of videos.
Be sure to go. We've got a lot of content coming out. Mike Huseman mentioned it earlier. Off Season After Dark. He puts that out on Tuesdays, typically on Tuesdays in the morning. Be sure to go follow him. He does a great job, not only in the SEC, but across the board. SEC After Dark, Thursdays, 9 Eastern, 8 Central. I should be on tomorrow night for the first time in a while. That is the plan right now, but that's where we make our picks every week. So be sure to join us. SEC After Dark, Thursdays, 9 Eastern, 8 Central. Bama After Dark, our friend Jake Thomas does a great job covering the Tide over there. So check him out. You can go follow him. Bama After Dark 2, typically coming out on Tuesdays live, 6:30 Eastern, 5:30 Central. Sometimes he leads us in on Wednesdays. And then you can check out the Regular Guys pod with Israel Troop and with our friend Corey Burton, who also does Locked on Vandy, does a great job with them as well. So you can follow them on Twitter at Regular Guys Pod. And as our friend Mike Huseman said earlier, he has got a show coming up with Locked on Ole Miss to preview the Egg Bowl. I think that they're doing that tomorrow morning, if I remember correctly. Shameless plug here. There it is. Shameless plug.
Friday
check
morning.
out Steve. Yep. Check out Steve and myself on the Locked on Ole Miss Egg Bowl preview show on Friday morning. So be sure to go follow. If you're not already, many of you are watching us from Stephen Willis's Twitter, but at the Stephen Willis, you can go check out that show, or you can check it out by searching them on YouTube, Locked on Ole Miss.
Yep, and one more shameless plug. If A&M wins, I have a bet with the SEC After Dark guys that I have to shave a Fu Manchu. So I don't know why I did that as like a positive thing, if A&M wins, which I'm obviously rooting for. So if the Aggies win next week on Biscuits and SEC and SEC After Dark, I'll have a nice handlebar mustache going. So everybody out there without a dog in the fight, root for the Aggies.
There you go. And funny enough, it's Hammer will be on his honeymoon in Florida while the Aggies are playing this game. At least I think he's traveling, and then we'll get to Florida in time to watch the game. So he may have to have a Fu Manchu on his honeymoon, which is just the cherry on top. So everybody out there, you got to root for the Aggies, if only for Hammer to have a Fu Manchu on his honeymoon and on SEC After Dark and Biscuits and SEC Live next week.
Absolutely. Well, thanks again for joining, y'all. We are Biscuits and SEC Live. We'll be back next week. Have a great Thanksgiving and have a great rivalry week.
Thanks, everybody.
Gig 'em.